In the year 2147, humans lived not just on Earth, but also on Mars and the Moon. Technology had grown fast, but peace was still weak, after years of war between alien species and Earth. People had become cold and afraid of outsiders. Most aliens were seen as enemies, and few were ever trusted. John Miller was a simple man. He worked as a mechanic at Mars Base Alpha, a dusty and lonely station in the Red Desert. He had no family, no friends, and liked to stay quiet. John lost his wife and daughter in the war 5 years ago. Since then, he spoke only when needed, and fixed broken machines without questions one cold night. As the wind blew hard outside the station walls, John sat alone in the control room. He was checking old signal logs, trying to pass time. Suddenly, a soft sound came from the speaker. It was a weak radio signal, broken and full of static. John paused and listened carefully. He turned up the volume and leaned forward. A small voice came through the noise. It was not a normal signal. It sounded like a child, whispering something. The voice said, "Please. Help us. Please. Please." John froze. He looked at the screen. The signal was coming from the West Canyon, far from any known location. He tried to clean the signal, but it was still weak. He ran the coordinates again to be sure. John quickly called Commander Rex. "Sir, I picked up a strange signal," he said. Rex sounded annoyed. "It's probably space noise." "John, we get those all the time." "But sir, it sounded like a child." John replied, "There are no children on Mars. John, you're hearing ghosts." Rex laughed. "Forget it and go to sleep." But John couldn't forget it. The voice stayed in his mind, soft and sad. He waited until night shift ended. Then, without telling anyone, he took a small rover and left the base. He followed the signal through the canyon. The cold wind hit his face as the rover moved across red sand and sharp rocks. After 2 hours, he found something at the bottom of a narrow canyon. Half buried in the sand was a broken escape pod. It was not human-made. Its metal was dark blue, shaped like a tear, glowing slightly. Smoke was rising from one side. John jumped out and ran towards it. He opened the hatch slowly, expecting anything maybe. A weapon, maybe a trap. Inside, he saw 2 figures. One was a woman with purple skin and silver hair, her eyes half closed. She was holding a small child tightly. The child was no more than 5 years old, with the same silver hair and glowing blue eyes. They both looked tired, cold, and scared. John knelt beside them. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly. The woman looked at him with fear. The child whispered, "Mama." "He's human." John gave them water from his pack and a warm blanket. The woman was shaking, but she nodded slowly. He checked their wounds, burns, bruises, nothing too deep. He had seen worse in the war. They needed help fast, or they would die in the cold. John helped them into the rover. The child held his hand tightly as he drove back toward the hidden bunker he had built years ago. He kept looking at the woman. Who were they, and why were they alone on Mars, inside the bunker? He gave them food and more blankets. The woman finally spoke, her voice soft and broken. "My name is Sierra. My daughter is Lena. Thank you for helping us." John nodded. "You're safe now," he said, but deep inside, he knew it wasn't true. Suddenly, the warning light blinked on his panel. Movement detected outside the bunker. He checked the screen. Someone or something was out there, moving fast. "Stay here," he said, standing up and grabbing his old laser tool. He moved to the door and looked through the small window. There, in the distance, was a shadow, tall, thin, with glowing red eyes. It wasn't human, and it wasn't friendly. John's heart started to race. He whispered, "What did I just bring into my life?" Behind him, little Lena began to cry, outside. The shadow slowly stepped closer. The wind outside was quiet. But something moved in the dark. John stood at the door, holding his old laser tool tightly. The shadow he saw was no longer there. It had vanished into the red dust. He closed the metal door and turned to look at the two aliens. Sira sat on the floor, holding her daughter close. Little Lena looked at him with wide, tired eyes. John put the tool down and took a deep breath. "They found you," he said. "Who are they?" Sira didn't answer. Her hands were shaking and her skin was pale. John didn't want to scare them more. So he sat down at a safe distance. "I don't work for the military," he said gently. "I just fix machines. I don't like war, and I don't like secrets." He gave them warm soup and a small heater. At first, Sarah didn't touch the food, but Lena slowly reached for the cup. She sipped it carefully, then gave it to her mother. John smiled a little. It was the first time he saw something like peace in their eyes. After a few minutes, Sarah spoke again. "I didn't mean to come here," she said. "Our ship was attacked in space. We had no choice." John leaned forward, listening carefully. "Who attacked you?" he asked. Sira looked down. "I don't know. They wore black armor. They came for me." "Why you?" John asked. Sira didn't answer right away. She looked at her daughter, who was now asleep beside her. Then she whispered, "Because I know something." Before John could ask more, the power inside the bunker flickered. A low hum filled the room, and strange blue light came from Lena's bag. John stood up quickly, alarmed. Sira opened the bag and pulled out a glowing crystal. Lena must have touched it while sleeping. "What is that?" John asked, stepping back. Sira held it close. "It's not a weapon. It's memory." "Memory," John repeated. "Yes. The truth of what happened to my world and why they want us dead." John stared at the crystal, unsure what to think. It looked old, like something from a museum, but the power inside it was strong. "Can you use it?" he asked. "No," Sira replied. "Not alone. It needs a key." Suddenly, a loud beep came from John's watch. He checked the screen. Base Alpha had scanned this area. Military patrol was only 2 hours away. If they found the bunker, they would take Sarah and Lena away. No questions asked. John looked at the two, scared aliens, and his heart hurt. He remembered the last time he saw his daughter. The same small hands, the same quiet eyes. He couldn't let the military find them. "We need to move," John said. Now Sira looked tired, but she nodded. He packed food, tools, and warm clothes into a small bag. Sira carried the crystal. John carried Lena. They left the bunker quietly, using the secret tunnel John had built long ago. It led to the other side of the canyon, away from patrol zones. As they walked, Sira finally started to trust him more. "You're not like the others," she said. John gave a short smile. "I used to be." They reached a small cave and rested inside. The crystal glowed softly, casting blue light on the cave walls. John sat near the entrance, watching the sky for drones. Sira came and sat beside him. "Thank you," she said. "Why me?" John asked. "Because you listened," she replied. That night, John couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the signal, the broken pod, and the shadow in the dark. He felt something bigger was coming, something dangerous, and somehow he was now a part of it. Before sunrise, he heard a noise. He stepped outside and saw strange tracks in the sand. Not from his rover, not from Earth soldiers. Clawed feet, long and deep, moving in circles near the cave. He walked back slowly. Inside, Lena was awake. Sitting beside her mother, she looked at John and said, "They are coming again." "How do you know?" John asked. She pointed to the crystal. It now showed a red, blinking dot. Getting closer, John checked his bag and saw a small tracking chip stuck to Lena's jacket. Someone had already found them. "Get ready," he said. "We leave now." Sira held the crystal tightly and stood up. John lifted Lena again, and they ran into the morning light behind them. A strange sound echoed through the canyon. Not human, not machine. Something else was hunting them. Something they didn't understand yet. The silence of the canyon was broken by a strange sound. It was not wind, not a machine, not an animal. It was something live. Something that clicked, hissed, and moved like it did not belong on this planet. John, Sierra, and little Lena hid. Behind a tall rock, their breaths were short, their backs pressed against the cold stone. John peeked slowly from the side in the distance. A dark shape moved through the red dust. It was tall, thin, and fast. Its body was covered in shiny black armor. Two glowing red eyes scanned the land like searchlights. It was not a drone, and it was not human. "That's not Earth's military," John whispered. Sierra nodded with fear in her eyes. "They are hunters." "What do they want?" John asked. Sierra held Lena tighter and said, "They were created to destroy truth." John didn't fully understand, but one thing was clear. Whoever these hunters were, they wanted the crystal, and they wanted Sierra gone. They waited until the sound faded, then ran through the narrow path between the rocks. John led the way, scanning the sky for drones and the ground for traps. He had spent years alone on Mars, and knew how to hide. They moved fast, but not fast enough. The tracker John had removed from Lena's jacket was only one. A second one, smaller and hidden, was still active inside her toy, back at Base Alpha. Red lights blinked on the radar screen. Commander Rex smiled. "Found them," he said. "Send the unit." Meanwhile, John guided them toward an old mining station he remembered from years ago. It was broken, unused, and buried under sand. Perfect to rest and hide inside the station. It was cold and dark. John lit a small lamp and gave Lena food. Sierra sat beside her, weak and quiet. Her shoulder wound was getting worse, and her breathing was slow. "You need help?" John said. "Real help. There is no one." Sierra replied, "No doctor for people like me." John thought hard. There was a secret medical lab nearby, hidden in the hills. He had worked there once, repairing machines. It was shut down now, but maybe it still had supplies. "I'll go alone," John said. "You both stay here." Sierra looked at him with trust in her tired eyes. She did not speak, but she nodded. John left before sunrise. Using an old rover he found in the station, he drove fast, avoiding patrol zones and drone paths. The hills were quiet, but the wind carried strange sounds at the edge of the lab. He found the entrance buried. He dug for 30 minutes, then crawled inside. The lights still worked, but flickered. The walls were covered in dust and wires hung like vines. He searched every room until he found the medbay, old but still full of machines and tools. He took bandages, healing spray, and energy shots. Then something caught his Aja-locked cabinet marked confidential. He used his old ID card, and a little force to open it. Inside were files, documents, and photos. He flipped through them and froze. There was Sierra's face on a screen, marked High-Risk Alien Research Division. And below it, words that chilled his blood. Subject holds critical data that must not reach public. John stared at the file. Was she a criminal, or someone hiding the truth? He took the files and rushed back to the station. When he returned, Lena ran to him. "Mom is not waking up," she cried. John dropped everything and rushed to Sierra. She was breathing, but barely. He gave her the shot, cleaned her wound, and wrapped it with care. After some time, her eyes opened slowly. "You came back," she whispered. "I said I would," John replied. Later that night, he showed her the file. "Is this true?" he asked. Sierra looked at the photo and said quietly, "Yes, they hunted my ship because of what I carry." "The crystal," John said. Sierra nodded. "It holds a recording of Earth's first attack." "Not the aliens. If the people see this, they'll know the truth." John sat in silence. He now had a choice: stay out of it or risk everything to reveal the truth. Suddenly, the alarm beeped again. Something was flying toward them. Fast, Sierra grabbed Lena and John loaded his old weapon. Through the window, they saw it not one, but 3 black-armored hunters. Dropping from the sky like shadows with wings, the station doors shook with force. "We have to run," John said. "No," Sierra replied. "We go to the vault." "What?" "Vault, the one hidden under the North Cliffs. It is where the crystal can speak." "Can we make it?" "We have to." John took a deep breath, looked at the scared child, the brave mother, and the burning sky. Then he said, "Let's move." As they escaped through a hidden back door, the first hunter broke through the roof. It screamed with a sound that shook the metal walls. But John didn't stop. Not this time. The sky above Mars turned a deep red as the sun began to set. Dust storms moved slowly across the land, like sleeping giants in the distance. John drove the rover as fast as he could, his hands tight on the controls. Sierra sat beside him, pale and weak, with Lena asleep in her lap. The crystal, wrapped in cloth, glowed gently in her arms. Behind them, smoke rose from the broken station. The hunters had found it, but they were too late. John had escaped with seconds to spare. "Where is this vault?" he asked, his eyes on the rocky road. Sierra opened her eyes and pointed toward the North Cliffs. "Under the mountain," she said. "My people built it long ago. It is hidden deep. And only the crystal can open the path." "How far?" "Maybe 5 hours," she whispered. "If the storm does not catch us." John looked at the sky again. The red clouds were thick, and the wind was rising. They had no choice. He pushed the rover harder as they drove. Lena woke up and sat up slowly. She looked outside and asked, "Is this Earth?" John smiled gently. "No, this is Mars." "Is Mars always so sad?" she asked. John didn't answer. He didn't know how to explain war, loss, and loneliness. To a child, they drove for hours, crossing sharp hills and dry valleys. They stopped only once to rest and drink water. Sierra's condition was worse now, her breathing slow and shallow. John gave her another dose of the healing spray. But it would not last. That night, they finally reached the cliffs. The wind was strong, and sand filled the air. John used a scanner to search for a cave. After a few minutes, he found a small path hidden behind rocks. They left the rover and walked carefully through the narrow path. Lena held John's hand, her small fingers cold and shaking. Inside the cave, the walls were smooth, almost glass-like. Symbols were carved into the stone-old alien language that glowed faintly in the dark. Sierra stopped and unwrapped the crystal. She placed it in a small hole in the wall. The cave shook slightly, and a soft light opened a hidden door. John stared in surprise. Behind the wall was a spiral staircase, going deep underground. They walked down slowly, step by step. The air became warmer, and the light from the walls grew brighter. Finally, they reached a large round chamber. In the center was a strange machine, shaped like a tree made of silver. At its base was a small slot, the exact shape of the crystal. Sierra placed the crystal inside. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the machine came to life. Blue light rose through its branches, and a voice echoed through the chamber. It was not loud, but deep and calm. "This is the truth," the voice said. The day piece was broken. Holograms appeared in the air, showing ships, people, and explosions. The first image showed a peaceful meeting between Sierra's people and Earth leaders. The second image showed Earth's military firing first. The third showed Sierra escaping with her daughter as her ship burned. John watched in silence. His hands slowly formed fists. "They lied to everyone," he said. "They said it was the aliens who attacked first." "They needed an enemy," Sierra said. "Fear makes people easy to control." John looked at Lena. who sat quietly, watching the lights. "She deserves a better future," he said. Then suddenly, the lights blinked. Sierra turned quickly. "Something is coming." The chamber shook again. But not from the machine, from above. Something was digging through the rock. John grabbed his bag and pulled out a signal booster. "I can send this message to Earth, to Mars base, to the moon colonies," he said. "But I need time," Sierra nodded and stood up slowly. "I will block the tunnel," she said. "You send the truth." "No," John said. "You're not strong enough." Sierra smiled faintly. "You helped me when I had nothing. Now, let me help you." She kissed Lena on the forehead, then walked back up the stairs. John connected the machine to his booster and began the upload. The truth started traveling through space, but the time was short. Above, the first hunter broke into the cave. It roared with anger and charged down the steps. John picked up the crystal and held it like a weapon. He stood between Lena and the stairs. He was only a mechanic. But he would not run, not this time. Then the chamber lights exploded in brightness. Sierra had reached the top with her last strength. She triggered the vault's defense system. A pulse of energy shot through the walls, burning the first hunter to ash. But it was too much for her body. Sierra collapsed at the entrance, her last breath a whisper, "Protect her." John watched as the upload finished. A green light blinked, message sent. He turned to Lena, who held his hand. "It's over," she said softly. John knelt beside her and whispered, "No, little one, it's just the beginning." The chamber was quiet now. Only the soft hum of the machine remained. The truth had been sent to every outpost, every station, every screen on Earth and Mars. The message had left the vault like a light in the darkness, but not everyone wanted the light. Some wanted to keep the world in shadow. John sat beside little Lena, holding her close. The silver tree in the center of the room had stopped glowing. The crystal was now dark and warm, like it had gone to sleep. Lena looked at him, her voice soft and shaking. "Is my mama gone?" John didn't know what to say. He looked up the spiral stairs where Sierra had gone. The energy blast that saved them had also taken her away. He nodded slowly. "Yes. But she saved you." Lena didn't cry, but her eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "She promised to stay." John wrapped a blanket around her and stood up. "We have to move, Lena," he said. "We're not safe here." They left the vault and returned to the surface. The storm had passed, and the stars above Mars were bright and cold. John used a flare to mark the vault's entrance so it could never be lost again. He promised Sarah in his heart, "I will protect her, no matter what." They walked back to the rover and began the long trip toward an old rebel zone. John knew of a hidden colony there, a place where outcasts and truth-seekers lived. Maybe they could help protect the child, but unknown to him, the truth he had sent was already causing fire across the galaxy. At Mars Base Alpha, Commander Rex stood in silence. The message had played across every screen in the base. Soldiers watched in shock as the real story unfolded. Whispers filled the hall's questions, doubts and anger. "We were told it was a surprise attack," one officer said. Another whispered, "We killed thousands." For nothing, Rex turned to his top agent, a tall woman in black armor, her eyes cold, her voice calm. "Send a team," Rex said. "Find the man, find the girl. Destroy everything." "Yes, sir," she replied. "But what if people start listening to him?" Rex clenched his fist. "Then we give them something else to fear." Meanwhile, John stopped the rover near a quiet valley. He needed rest, and Lena had fallen asleep again. As he sat outside under the stars, he opened the file he had taken from the old lab. Inside was a hidden folder, Sierra's full report. He read page after page, each one heavier than the last. Sarah had once worked with Earth scientists. She believed in peace. She tried to stop the war before it began, but when she spoke the truth, they silenced her, called her a traitor, locked her name in secret files. They destroyed her planet's ships, then blamed her people for the attack. All so Earth could claim alien tech and expand into new space. John leaned back, looking at the dark sky above. His hands were shaking. He had fought in the war. He had followed orders. Now he knew he had helped the wrong side. As he closed the file, he heard a sound behind him. He turned quickly, pulling out his tool gun, but it was only Lena, awake and watching him. "What's wrong?" she asked. John smiled gently. "Just thinking about my mama." "Yes," he said. "She was brave." Lena looked up at the stars. She used to say, "Stars never lie." John nodded. Then maybe it's time people learn to stop lying too. But as they rested, danger moved closer. A ship with no lights. And silent engines flew above the canyon, inside. The black-armored agent received new orders. "Do not speak." The voice on the com said, "Do not fail." She smiled, understood. The next morning, John woke to find a small message. Drone near the rover. He opened it and found a coded text from an old friend. The message read, "They're coming for you. John, go west, find the shadow market." John packed their things quickly and drove toward the West Valley. They passed broken outposts, abandoned mining towns and fields of scrap. Lena asked, "Where are we going?" John replied. To people who don't believe the news, they reached the shadow market before nightfall. It was hidden underground, full of smugglers, traders, and people who lived without rules. John found an old friend there, a man named Rail, part human, part machine. Rail looked at Lena, then at John. "So you started a war with the truth?" He said, "No." John replied, "I ended a lie." Rail grinned. "Well, lies die loud, my friend, and truth bleeds." He handed John a new ID chip and a map. "You'll need to move fast." As they left the market, a silent shadow followed. Them, the agent from Mars base, cold and ready. She whispered, "Truth or not, the girl must not survive." The chase was not over. In fact, it had only just begun. The shadow market was behind them now. Dust blew through the old roads as John drove fast. Lena sat beside him, holding the crystal in her hands. It no longer glowed, but she believed. It still had something left to give. They moved west, deeper into the wild lands of Mars. The map Rail gave them showed a secret tower hidden in the hills. An old relay station from before the war, long forgotten, if it still worked. They could send a stronger message across the galaxy, one that could not be blocked. Not even by Earth's high command. John knew this was their last chance. Once the full message was sent, people everywhere would see the truth. No more lies, no more silence. But behind them, the enemy was not far. The black-armored agent had found their trail. She moved like a ghost, fast and cold. She didn't care about peace or lies. Her job was to erase the child and bury the truth forever, as John's rover climbed. The last hill, the old relay tower appeared. It stood tall and broken, wires hanging like vines. But its core still pulsed with power. John stopped the rover and looked around. "We're here," he said. Lena looked up at the tall metal structure. "It looks dead," she whispered. John smiled. "Let's see if we can wake it up." They climbed the steps carefully, floor by floor, inside. The station smelled of rust and dust. John found the control room and cleared off the old panels. He connected his signal booster and placed the crystal into the energy socket. A soft hum began, and lights flickered on the screen. The crystal glowed again, soft blue at first, then brighter. The machine had recognized it. The truth still lived. Inside, waiting to be told, John opened the message panel. He looked at Lena and said, "This will show everything your mother's message, the war, the lies, Lena nodded. She wanted everyone to know. Then, without warning, the lights turned red. John turned quickly. The door behind them was open. The black-armored agent stepped inside, her boots silent, her eyes cold. She pointed a pulse weapon at John. "Step away from the girl," she said. John stood in front of Lena. "You're too late," he said. The message is already uploading." The agent's voice was calm. "Then I'll just stop it here." She fired, and John pushed Lena behind a console. The shot hit his arm, and he fell. But he didn't let go of the booster. He reached with his other hand and slammed the final key. "Upload complete," the machine said. The agent growled and stepped forward. She aimed again, but Lena stood up. She held the crystal in front of her like a shield. The crystal shined bright white, blinding the room. A wave of energy pushed the agent back. She crashed into the wall, her weapons sliding across the floor. John grabbed Lena and ran to the exit. Behind them, the tower began to shake. The crystal had released its full charge. Now that the truth was free, it had no more purpose. The tower started to collapse, metal cracking and glass falling. John and Lena jumped down the stairs as fire burst through the walls. They reached the outside just as the tower exploded behind them. The message had been sent, and the proof was now in every system, every network, every station, across Mars and Earth. Screens blinked and buzzed. People stopped what they were doing and watched in silence. They saw Syrah's face, her voice, her truth. They saw the attack, the lies, the betrayal. Some cried, some shouted, others stood in shock. But no one could ignore it anymore. At Mars Base Alpha, Commander Rex stared at the screen in rage. He threw his glass across the room and yelled, "Shut it down!" But it was too late. Even his own men looked at him with doubt now. The wall of lies had cracked, and there was no patch strong enough to hold it. Back in the desert, John held Lena close. They watched the lights of the burning tower fade into the sky. He looked at his burned arm and smiled. "It's over," he said. Lena looked at him. "Is it really?" John didn't answer right away. He looked at the stars above them. "Maybe not," he said. "But the world will be different now." He stood up slowly and helped Lena to her feet. They had no home, no safe place yet, but they had something better than silence. They had the truth, and people had heard it. Suddenly, a small drone flew down beside them. It blinked green and played a voice. "This is Rael. We saw your message. You're not alone." John smiled. "Let's go, kid," he said. Lena smiled too. "Let's find the good people." Together, they walked toward the west horizon. The sky was still red, but something had changed. The truth was out, and it was stronger than fear. The sun was rising over Mars. Its red light touched the dry rocks and empty valleys. But something had changed. A new hope was growing across the planet. John and Lena rode in a small hover truck. Sent by Rael's people, it was old, noisy, and full of scratches, but it moved fast. Lena sat beside John, holding a small bag of her mother's things. She didn't speak much, but her eyes were strong now. She had seen pain. She had seen loss. But she had also seen truth, and that changed her forever. They arrived at a hidden rebel camp deep in the western canyons. Tents and old ships were placed in tight rows. People moved fast, some fixing machines, others watching the sky. When they saw John and Lena, they stopped and stared. Rael walked forward, smiling with his half-metal face. "You made the galaxy shake, my friend," he said. John stepped out and helped Lena down. "We didn't want war," he said. "We wanted the truth to live." Rael nodded. "Well, now it's alive. But it also made enemies scream." He showed them a screen. Across Earth, Mars, and the colonies, people were protesting. They wanted answers. They wanted justice. They wanted the leaders who lied to step down, but not all were happy. Commander Rex had locked Mars Base Alpha and declared martial law. He called the truth enemy Tech. He ordered the capture of John and Lena. Calling them traitors, Rael looked at John. They will come for this camp soon. He said, they want to silence the girl. John's eyes were full of fire. Then we make this the place they remember. Rael grinned. Now you sound like an Earthling. That night, the rebels prepared for war. John worked side by side with fighters, engineers, and even old robots. He set up shields, weapons, traps, and towers. Lena stayed inside the command tent. Safe but ready, she recorded a short message for the world. My name is Lena, she said. My mother died for the truth. I'm not dangerous. I'm just a child who wants to live. Her voice spread like fire. More people across the colonies began to support the cause. Even some Earth soldiers started asking questions. Not all humans were cruel. Some were waking up at dawn. Mars Base Alpha launched its final strike. A fleet of drones, gunships, and armored units moved toward the canyon. They thought the rebels would run. They were wrong. John stood at the front line, weapon ready. He wore a vest made from parts of Sierra's ship, not for armor, but for memory. Rael stood beside him, holding a large plasma cannon. We hold the line, he said. No one touches the girl. The battle began with a scream from the sky. Drones dropped bombs, but the rebels had shields. Gunships fired lasers, but the towers shot them down. Armored units rolled in, but the rebels used traps and clever tricks. John moved through the smoke, leading small teams. He hit targets with perfect aim, saving fighters again and again. Every time someone fell, he helped them rise, not just as a fighter, but as a human. Suddenly, the black armored agent appeared. She moved through the fire like a shadow. Her goal was clear: find Lena. Erase her. John saw her and ran back to the command tent. She had already broken inside. Lena was hiding behind a table, the crystal glowing in her hand. The agent stepped forward, weapon raised. But John crashed into her from the side. They fought hard, smashing into walls and breaking machines. The agent was fast, strong, trained to kill. But John had something she didn't: heart. He remembered Sierra. He remembered the war. He remembered his daughter. He fought not with hate, but with purpose. In one final move, he grabbed a power cable and shocked her armor. She fell to her knees, gasping. John looked her in the eyes. You're not a machine, he said. You can still choose. She stared at Lena, then at John, for the first time. Her face showed doubt. She dropped her weapon and backed away. The war outside was ending. The Earth soldiers who came to destroy the rebels saw the truth. Many lowered their weapons. Some even joined the rebels. They had heard Lena's message. They had seen the proof, and deep inside, they remembered what it meant to be human. Commander Rex tried to run, but his own men arrested him. The truth had won. Later that week, a peace council was formed. Aliens and humans sat at one table for the first time in years. Lena was invited to speak. She stood on a small stage, nervous but proud. My name is Lena, she said. I am the daughter of a scientist who loved peace. I am not your enemy. I am your future. People clapped, some cried. Even the stars above seemed to shine brighter. John watched from the crowd. He smiled, knowing his job was done. But Lena's journey was just beginning. The galaxy had changed, not because of power, not because of weapons, but because one man listened and one child spoke the truth. Humanity, F***, yeah, ***.